planning committee meeting. Just see, obviously this is 11th of the 11th, so if it does go into, if the meeting goes on to 11 o'clock, we'll stop for 2 minutes silence. Any declarations of interest?
Can I declare an interest, Harry?
Yes.
Item planning 2101229 FUL Flex Fitness, please.
Oh yes, yes.
Can I declare an interest there? I inadvertently expressed an opinion.
Okay, no problem. Any other declarations? No, thank you. Any apologies?
Sophia Coyle.
We've got apologies. I'll note the one for Sophia Coyle. We've also got apologies from Councillors Anderson, Burgess. Councillor Graham was tentative, so I think he's going to be an apology. Sophia Coyle, Councillor Logue, and Councillor McKendrick.
Did you shout something there, Greg?
Harry.
So say that again, Greg. Never picked it up.
I says I'm muted. I don't know how you thought it was me. It wasn't me.
All right, okay. No, sorry, I thought I heard somebody shouting and I thought it was yourself. Okay.
It's me shouting at the dogs, Harry.
Put them in the kennel outside. Right, agenda item 2 is the planning applications. First application, page 7 to 18. Mr. Willie Brown, light industrial storage and distribution units, site east of Bigger Road, Chapel Hall, Airdrie, and the recommendation is refuse. There was a request for a hearing, but it doesn't meet the criteria. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Harry, can you say something on this?
Michael,
Harry,
Councillor Coyle, yep.
thank you very much. I know that this application's in our area, Sandy and Mines, and I believe we had a letter from the applicant which says there are emails from the council planning officers saying that class 4 and class 5 uses can be acceptable for this site. I, for one, would like to see these emails before deciding on this application. Can you arrange to get the copies of these emails and we can talk about this again at another committee meeting? Because at the end of the day, until we get this further information, I would suggest that we defer this meeting or put it forward for a hearing so that the applicant can put forward his case. Sorry.
Okay, Michael, you're asking it for to be continued. It doesn't meet the criteria for hearing, but you're asking it for to be continued.
Further information, Harry, because
other information, okay.
Harry,
yes.
come in, Chris. Can I also ask something, Chair, on this one?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's when I read it, it's actually most unusual for the applicant to be objective. And unless I've read this wrongly, and there seems to be objections in from people who are not connected to the site. So can I get a bit of clarification on that, please?
Okay. Who's going to speak to this? Is it you, Lindsay?
Yes, normally we don't identify who has objected to any planning application, and I think that was maybe a slip up on our behalf. We would normally not make any reference to who has actually made comment on the planning application. So I think it's fair to say that the section 8.21 of the report actually shouldn't have been in there. That was my fault. But given it is in the report, my understanding is that there was a representation from the applicant, from Mr. Brown, objecting to the proposal as an individual and not as a part of the company that he's part of. Beyond that, I couldn't make any comment on that. In terms of who the other objectors are, they certainly don't live, or we don't have any information on what the remit is in terms of objecting to the proposals, but they do kind of stay kind of quite some distance away from the site, but they don't actually say what their interest in the site is.
I think we need a wee bit of clarification on this, Chair, because, you know, for the applicant to be apt to actually be objecting to the proposal seems very strange. I don't understand it.
I think it's a first for me, Sandy. I've never seen that in a planning application, and I've been on and off planning for quite some time.
I think we need more information on this, Harry, before we can make a decision on this.
We've got a request to continue this, moved by Councillor Coyle. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second it, Chair.
The motion would be to, if there's someone to move the motion that is refused.
I'll refuse it, Harry.
Could we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we'll just take the continuation as the amendment, and the motion is refused. Okay, Mark, you want to
Yeah, so
do the roll call?
just to clarify on that, motion would be to refuse the application. Amendment would be to continue for further information. So I'll just run through each of the elected members. So Councillor Anderson's not here. Councillor Beveridge.
Amendment.
Councillor Burgess is an apology. Councillor Michael Coyle.
Amendment.
Councillor Sophia Coyle's an apology. Councillor Curran.
Motion.
Councillor Douglas.
Motion.
Councillor Goldsack, I don't believe is on the meeting. Councillor Graham is an apology. I don't believe Councillor Johnston is on. Councillor Kelly.
Motion.
Councillor Lennon.
Amendment.
Councillor Logue is an apology. Councillor McGregor is not on the meeting. Councillor McGowan.
Amendment.
Councillor McKendrick is an apology. Councillor McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McManus is not on the meeting. Councillor McPake.
Amendment.
Councillor McVeigh.
Motion.
Councillor Quigley.
Motion.
Councillor Redding.
Amendment.
Councillor Shields.
Motion.
Councillor Stubbs.
Amendment.
And finally, Councillor Watson.
Amendment.
Thank you. The motion has attracted 7 votes. The amendment has attracted 8 votes. So the application is continued for further information.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is pages 19 to 35. Ogilvy Homes, residential development in Princeville, site at St Andrews Drive, Westerwood, Cumbernauld, and the recommendation is refused. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Pages 36 to 42. LGR Properties Co. Limited, a drive-through coffee shop and reconfiguration of existing car park, site at DW Sports Fitness on a Coatbacken Street, Coatbridge, and the recommendation is grant. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Pages 43 to 49.
Harry, I've got.
Convener, I think Councillor Stubbs is wishing to come in.
Oh, sorry.
I'd put in the tip off for the Chapel Hall one as well, but obviously the point was made. I didn't need to, but I don't know if it's. I wasn't sure if it wasn't working there.
All right.
I've just got a question on the coffee shop. No objection to the proposals, but obviously we've got quite a large building there that's currently lying empty, if I'm correct. And the proposal is to build the coffee shop in the car park. If my reading of it is right. Is this going to make it more difficult for us to try and dispose of, or for someone to come and take over the responsibility for the large building that's there, whether it's going to be for another gym or for something else? If we start kind of eating into the car park with coffee shops and parking for the coffee shop, has that been given consideration, full consideration by the authority before making the recommendation when discussing it with the applicant?
Lindsay?
No, convener, that's
Graham.
that'll be me.
Okay.
Councillor Stubbs, as part of the consideration of the applications, there was a lot of dialogue with our roads colleagues because we were wanting to make sure that this proposal wouldn't adversely impact on the operation of the existing building, as you highlight is vacant at the minute. But we do have, and I think it's referenced in the report, we do have a current planning application to change the use of, I believe it's the upper floor of the building to gym, to make the entire property a gym. If that planning application is approved, the car parking arrangements are satisfactory. If the proposal remains as kind of a mix of retail and gym as it currently is, then again the parking is sufficient. I think when you look at the site, there is a fair amount of parking, and although you would be introducing another use to the site, you know, there still would be parking there. So I think all in all, we're satisfied that the proposal could go ahead without adversely impacting on the future operation of the existing property.
Okay, Alan, you happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Right, thank you. So recommendation grant, agreed.
Convener, Councillor McLaren's wishing to come in.
Sorry, Councillor McLaren.
No, sorry. No, you're fine. You're fine.
All right.
That's chat bar there. You're okay.
Pages 43 to 49, flex fitness, change of use of industrial unit to gym. It's retrospective at Ellison Court, Muirhouse, Motherwell, and the recommendation is refused. Is that agreed? Thank you. Pages 50 to 56, Mr. Sam Arthur, a single dwelling house site east of 450 High Street, and the recommendation is grant. And the next one, very similar, 57 to 63, it's Woodside Developments, a single dwelling house in plot 8, site east of 450 High Street, New Hill, and the recommendation is grant. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Pages 64 to 69, at CK Hutchison Networks, proposed 20-metre phase 8 monopole, wraparound cabinet and base associated salary works at Cofinnan Court, Gartcosh. The recommendations prior approval will be given. I've got Michael McPake.
Thanks, convener. This gives me great concern, absolutely great concern with this. I mean, we're told as planning, when you're on planning, keep your own counsel. When you're going to speak about something, you'll get your chance. We've been seeing communications about this from constituents for a couple of months now, and been telling, look, I can't say very much. But then to get the papers in last week, prior approval has been given to this. This is just outrageous. It's shocking. When I started to look into it, it seems as if legislation was changed in April of this year to make sure that these things go through. Now, I didn't see that in MD's manifesto in the May election of this year. But now this community of Gartcosh are having this hideous thing put outside their house. Now, nobody is arguing here that we don't need these masks, but of course we do. We've all got 2 mobile phones in this chamber right now, probably. We certainly do need them, but we've got to have a bit more considerations for communities we represent to just impose these on the side of the road. So, Chair, I'm going to move that we reject this and get them to look at it again and put it somewhere it's more suitable for everyone, not just the company who are taking a quick fix as far as I can see here. So, Chair, I've finished there. I would like to maybe get some of the officers' views on why, the prior approval given, why, to my mind, the committee has been overlooked here. Thank you.
Yep. I know the terminology used as if it has been given, but it's a recommendation, so therefore you can oppose it if you so wish. Lindsay, it's yourself. Oh, sorry, Graham.
Yeah. Yes, I was just going to make that point, convener, that as with any referral of a report to committee, that is the recommendation from the planning services that prior approval should be given. The committee can determine this how they see fit. I just wanted to clarify one thing. I think in the description on the agenda it says 20-metre mast. Yeah, it was reduced in height to 16 metres. So it was just to make that point. We might come on to this. I don't know how much more you want me to say, but the company did look at a range of different options within the local area. They need the mast to serve, as Councillor McPhee points out, you know, where people live, where people will be using their mobile phones. So they looked at a range of options. This was their favoured one. They discounted a number of other sites before coming forward with this one. And you know, that was why we think prior approval should be given. But as I say, it's the committee's decision.
Okay, thanks. Next on, Councillor Lennon, Greg.
Thanks very much for that. Following on for Councillor McPake's emotive speech there, I think that one of the key points to this is also that the fact that the consultation process was practically fundamentally flawed. Letters didn't get out really on time, affording for enough opportunity for objections to be made, so it needed interjection for elected members to try and get that process extended. In addition to that, also, I think that, again, although in the face of it, that local residents may be unwilling to have such a monstrosity sitting on the front doorstep. I understand that that wouldn't be a consideration for planning. However, I don't really think anyone of us would be best pleased if we ended up with something like that that's been prior approved, or the recommendation of prior approved. So to put that forward as well, Chair.
Thanks, Greg. John McLaren.
Thanks, Chair. I couldn't get my chat bar to work there. I fully agree with Michael and Greg here. But unfortunately, I'm sitting in a position that one of these masts was erected 3 weeks ago, and it's 20 metres. It is not 20 metres from any residential house. It's the sighting on these masts is absolutely shocking. The consultation is shocking. The company that was supplying and installing this mast went round on a Sunday night, put leaflets into the local houses' doors that were close to it, and the mast was erected on the Tuesday. Now, this is in the middle of a housing estate in Campsie View and Berrynow Road. Anything happening to this mast, if they hit any one of these houses, I'm actually sitting out the back, looking out the window at it just now, towering above the houses. Hopefully, planning don't Google these sites anymore. They go out and have a look at the sites and see the impact that it's going to have on people. And hopefully they go out to this one in Berrynow Road at Campsie View and have a look at it. And if they find fault with it, get it removed, because this is not a fitting site for this.
John, I've given you a bit of leeway there. We're talking about this application.
Yes, that's okay, Harry. That's just the evidence that's happening to the sites.
You can take up with the department, but let's stick to this one.
Right.
I know you've had problems with the phone masts in your own area, but if we could stick to the application that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's just an example of bad sighting, Harry.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Right, okay, take that point. Councillor Stubbs.
I can understand people are wanting to represent their communities, and people don't want these things. Nobody wants anything to change round about their house. They want kind of eyesores, or I mean, these are they're certainly not the most ridiculous looking things. They're quite, although they're high, they're quite small. You wouldn't really see it unless you were looking for it, I would suggest, these types of masts. But the fact is, as Graham touched on, the nature of what they are, you can't just go and put them in the middle of nowhere. They have to go in amongst where people stay for them to do their jobs. People want to have mobile signal, and if we want to, and we're moving towards 5G, and we want all of our towns and our villages to have full access to super fast mobile broadband, then we're going to have to build these somewhere. So I'm not really sure what the suggestion is. If we don't build it here, whereabouts do we put it? Or do we just leave Glenboig without 5G? Is that the suggestion from the members that are putting forward an amendment here?
It's actually Gatcosh, Alan.
Oh, sorry, Glenboig, Gatcosh.
Greg,
you know as well as I do, it's becoming, they're starting one and the same, aren't they?
Alan, we're not having a discussion here between members.
No, I'm not asking for a discussion.
Alan, you've listened for a minute. We've got opinions. This is individual members' opinions, and we take on board your opinion the same as we take on everybody else's opinion, and we'll come to a decision. Next on the list.
if I can finish with
Yeah, why carry on? Sorry, I didn't
so
cut you off.
the point I'm making, I'm not looking for the members to come back and give me a solution. I completely appreciate, and I think, Carrie, you and I have had a bit of a to and fro about. I mean, colleagues here will know that when making decisions on how I'm going to vote in this committee, I always take serious consideration of what local members say on particular issues, because that is one of the most important factors of why we have planning committees, for local members to represent the local wishes. If we both take that on board, I'm not convinced though that there's an argument not to build mobile phone masts on what is an A road at the end of the day, looking at the plan. So I would certainly be, when it comes to the time, be moving the recommendation.
Okay, next on is Sandy Watson.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I take your point, Chair, that we're dealing with this one particular subject at the moment, but I think the councillors need to be kept more informed as to what's going on here, because a mast has suddenly appeared at the corner of Cairnhill Road and Woodburn Avenue that none of the councillors, at least as far as I know, none of the councillors knew anything about. So I think there needs to be more communication with councillors with these masts going up to keep them advised, at least of particularly those that are on planning. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Andy. Alan Beveridge, Councillor Beveridge.
Thanks, Savina. I agree with Councillor Stubbs. In this day and age, the connectivity is vital. But it was something that I went back that Councillor Lennon said earlier about the letters didn't go out. Was that was there a problem with our planning department that these weren't the neighbours weren't lettered here? Because I'm not sure if that's a requirement or not. But as Councillor Lennon rightly says, if letters didn't go out, if it was a requirement, well, surely that should have been done. Thanks.
Okay, I'll take all the comments and then I'll ask Graham to reply. Next on is Councillor Redden, Jim Redden.
Thanks, convener. Just a point of information. The thing says it's a proposed 20-metre phase 8 monopole, but when we go to the map, it says development proposed 16-metre phase 8 monopole. So whatever it is, but also I'm looking at the map, but it doesn't tell me where it's going to be on the map. I think more information is vital. We seem to be getting a lackey information on a lot of things just now, and I can't make a decision on this until I know exactly where it's being sited. It doesn't say it on the map. Thanks.
I'll get the other officer to reply to that in due course. Is there anyone else other than, because I've got Greg Lennon next and Michael McPaig next, so I want to make sure that nobody.
Convener, I see Councillor Mike Boyle has got his hand up.
Sorry?
I put my hand up, Harry.
Oh, right, Michael. That's. I don't want to bring in then for a second time without someone having a chance at the first.
Thank you very much, convener. I totally agree with what Councillor Watson had said earlier on about the phone mast in Cairnhill Road. Nobody was given any notification at all without that, and what Jim Redden says there as well, there is no communication within these companies. And could this company that's intending to put this mast up in Garcosh, can they not resite it somewhere else, that it's not a disturbance to neighbours and that? Thank you.
Okay, right, Michael, point taken. Agnes, Councillor McGowan. I'll bring you in, Greg and Michael, but I'll get Councillor McGowan first.
Yeah, I just want to agree with my councillor colleagues that there was a mast went up in Airball Street in Motherwell. As far as I know, it never came to planning. I wasn't aware it was coming, and it just appeared. And is it not possible to put 5G connections on lampposts? Do we need these huge masts? Because seemingly 5G doesn't travel well, through buildings, so they have to put more connections, and they can put ones on buildings or on lampposts, which would be much more pleasing to the eye. Thank you.
Take your point. Councillor Lennon, Greg.
Thanks for your indulgence and letting me back in here. What I would say is obviously we're hearing quite a lot in relation to other members' local experiences of these posts and masts. But the key point still remains, we've got a consultation process that's fundamentally flawed. We've got a height description change now, so it's went from 20 to 16, and that's not been consulted with the local people either. Chair, I'll second Councillor McPake's motion to refuse.
Can you wait a minute, Greg, till everybody's had their say, then I'll ask for a move in a second, okay? Once the debate's over, we'll get the motions put forward. Councillor McPake, then I'll ask the officer to reply to all the points.
Chair, my question, my comment was just going to be around Alan Stubbs' comments about Glen Boyd. That's all. It was corrected there.
Right, okay, right. No, everybody's entitled to their opinion, no matter what. Graham, could you respond? Before I respond, I'm looking at the map and it shows you quite clearly where the proposed 60-metre phase monopole is going up on the Coatbridge Road. Take it is that correct, Graham?
Yeah, I mean it's difficult when you're dealing with quite a small development in terms of showing it on the plan. But yes, there is an indication as to where it's going. It's on the Coatbridge Road, opposite Kilfinnan Court. Just that there's a kind of intersection of footpaths, and it's shown on there. It's I'm not sure.
Is that the wee black dot? That's
yeah.
On?
Yeah.
Yep. And where does it say Kilfinnan Court?
Well, I mean, we use the Ordnance Survey base map, so not every street is kind of named on those, but Kilfinnan Court is the row of houses that face onto this open space area.
Right.
Thanks, convener. I'll need to go and visit it to see what it looks like.
Graham?
Yeah, in terms of, I'll try and sweep up just as quickly as I can. There were a couple of different things mentioned. In terms of doing new ground-based telecoms masts, it's not something that the company go to as their first go-to approach. What they try and do is they look at whether it's possible to share other masts with different operators. If that's not possible, they then look at things like, is it possible to locate on buildings and other existing structures? So it's as a kind of last resort that they put a new mast in place. In terms of the process, I suppose this is a bit of a new process. So in this Applications Act committee, because of the number of objections, a lot of these have been processed and there hasn't been a significant number of objections. But in terms of process, the neighbour notification letters get sent out by the planning service. They go to anybody within 20 metres of the mast. So that's dictated by the legislation. The information was, so in the case of this one, there was neighbour notification went out. Not all of the information was made public on the planning portal. When that was brought to our attention, we rectified that and we gave people more time to be able to make their comments. So we don't feel as if people have been disenfranchised in any way. They've been able to make their comments known, and we've had a number of objections here. I think that covers all the points, unless there was something else that I've maybe missed.
Okay, thanks, Graham. Now we're looking for a proposal. Councillor McPake, you've got your...
Yes, Chair, just before I do make my proposal, and this is going to make it even worse, I think. Kilfinnan Court happens to be the sociable rentable houses here. So the most disadvantaged, the cabinet has gone up right in front of their houses. So I'll make that point before I'm now going to formally move that we reject this on the grounds that the company need to look. We know, we're not arguing against the need. We know the need. We need to get it in a better place to suit everyone, not just the company. I think they're taking the easy option here. So I would like to formally move that, Chair.
On the grounds of the citing of inappropriate?
Yes, exactly.
Could I have a seconder for that?
But Harry, but again, I would like to check, Harry, if that's a legitimate move in this.
So, sorry, Greg, are you seconding Michael or what? Sorry.
Sorry, Harry. I was asking to second the motion, but I wanted it confirmed that that's a legitimate reason for refusal.
I believe it is.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
The two considerations we've got here are siting and design. The design of the mass is pretty fixed. So the one thing that we can consider is whether or not the siting.
Yep, it is, Greg. So you're taking the Michael?
Taking the Michael, Harry.
Okay. Councillor Stubbs?
I'll move the recommendation.
Move the recommendation. Could I have a seconder for that?
I'll support that, Harry, recommendation.
Okay. Can we use the same again, that the amendment would be refused and the motion would be grant? Mark? Is Mark still on?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Thank you. We'll just run through. So Councillor Anderson's not at the meeting. So Councillor Beveridge.
Motion.
Councillor Burgess is not on. Councillor Michael Coyle.
Amendment.
Councillor Curran.
Motion.
Councillor Douglas.
Amendment.
Councillor Kelly.
Motion.
Councillor Lennon. Councillor McGowan.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor McPake.
Amendment.
Councillor McVeigh.
Motion.
Councillor Quigley.
Amendment.
Councillor Redding.
Amendment.
Councillor Shields.
Motion.
Councillor Stubbs.
Motion.
And finally, Councillor Watson.
Amendment.
Thank you. The motion to give prior approval attracted 6 votes. The amendment to refuse the application on the grounds of citing attracted 9 votes. The application is refused.
Thank you, colleagues. Agenda item number 3 is law enforcement appeal decision, pages 172, just for noting. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agenda item 4 is North Lanarkshire Local Development Plan, Adoption Plan, and it's a mere pages 73 to 259. You'll be glad to hear that the officer isn't going to speak to every page. Gordon, could you highlight the appropriate parts that we need to discuss?
Thank you, convener. Good morning, members, and yes, indeed, I will not read every page of the document to you. Purpose of this report is to seek approval, members' approval for the incorporation of the recommended modifications and associated consequential changes arising from the report of examination.
Hold on a minute, Gordon. I think I've got a point of order for Jim Redden. I don't normally have points of order in a planning meeting.
Sorry, that's point of information.
All right.
I'll wait till after he speaks.
I would think so, because you might not need it. Right, okay, carry on, Gordon. Sorry for interrupting you.
Thank you. It's to seek approval to incorporate the recommended modifications and associated changes resulting from the report of examination into the required adoption plan. Members will be aware that the report of examination into the local development plan, modified proposed plan, was published on the 24th of May of this year. That report dealt with 35 unresolved issues identified by the council and recommended changes in 18 cases. Appendix 1 of your papers outlines the recommended modifications that it's proposed to accept. These include a number of amendments to text, to policy wording, in appendices and on proposals maps that were submitted for examination, along with a small number of typographical errors and typographical corrections that we would like to make to the recommended changes. Of particular note are the merging of all policy and guidance sections that were in the modified proposed plan, the replacement of Promlock 3, which is the promoting housing development sites policy, the updating of the housing land requirements appendix through the use of the 2019 Housing Land Audit, not the 2017, as was originally presented, and a replacement section in the utilities improvements policy relating to renewable energy, and that's a policy that we suggested effectively in response to the request for further information from the reporters. So that in essence is a policy wording suggested by the officers. In addition to these recommendations, the recommended changes, the Council received a letter in August of this year from the Reporters Unit confirming that we could make any further consequential changes required as a result of those recommendations. And also in accordance with the regulations, we can make a number of further changes in terms of grammatical corrections, typographical corrections or factual updates as required. Under the regulations pertaining to the local development plans, there's limited scope to depart from a recommendation, but as outlined in section 2.8 of the report that you have, and in appendix 2, we have identified one recommendation in the report of examination where, to use the words of the regulations, the recommendation is based on conclusions that could not reasonably have been reached based on the evidence considered at the examination. In this case, the reporters have made contradictory recommendations in relation to the number and definition of commercial centres they're recommending are recognised in the plan, and we are suggesting alternative wording to resolve this matter within the regulatory powers that we have. Taking into account all these modifications and consequential changes, we present as Appendix 3 to this report a consolidated non-graphic local development plan adoption plan policy document. And if this is endorsed by committee, we would then make further consequential changes in relation to the map book and all other documentation required to accompany the adoption plan. That's the strategic environmental assessment, habitats regulation assessment and any other associated documents. And we would thereafter submit that to the Scottish Government in accordance with the steps outlined in paragraphs 2.1 and 2.2 of the report. Prior to that submission, we will obviously undertake a further review to identify any further consequential typographical or factual changes that we may note. And in case members have spotted, I have already noted a couple, despite our best efforts. And we'll consult with the convener and head of service in order to seek agreement to make those minor changes. There's 3 recommendations relating to the approval of appendices 1 and 2. Agreement of these being incorporated into the adoption plan as presented in Appendix 3, and agreement to adopt the plan as the North Lanarkshire Local Development Plan on receipt of the appropriate notification from the Scottish Government. Thank you, Convener, and I'm now happy to take any questions or make points of clarification.
Councillor Red and Jim, is that?
Thanks, Convener. I've attempted to read this document a number of times. And to tell you the truth, I don't know what it means. I don't know what it says. I have numbers of questions. It refers to PP3, AD3, PP4, things like that. Also on page 120 it says, the plan is supported by other statutory and non-statutory guidance listed in the appendix and pages, ? Where is these pages? I feel that it's referring to a lot of documents that I don't have. I don't know if other councils have them. I don't have a lot of these documents. It refers to the Strategic Investment Sites Cycle Access Study 2013, which is what, 8 years ago. I don't have that document, so I can't relate to it. I just feel that the whole document is just undecipherable, I think would the word be. I would be grateful if we could get documents that people can understand and not just planning officers. Thanks, Chair.
Gordon?
I'm assuming it's all of the documents that you're referring to there. The issue of the question marks is because we don't have the final page numbers until we have a final graphic version. And if I've not made that clear within the document itself, then I apologise. The references to PP3s and AD3s, those are the policies within the main document submitted as Appendix 3. And the background paper that you refer to, along with all the other background papers, are the background papers that were referred to when this was originally presented as a proposed plan and then updated as a modified proposed plan to be presented and agreed at that time to be taken forward. There are hundreds and hundreds of pages of those documents. Background documents have not changed since the modified proposed plan was presented in 2018 to members and agreed at that time. They are available online should members require to look at them. But essentially what we have here today is Appendix 1, which, yes, unfortunately makes reference to PPs and ADs. Those are references to the policies, and those policies are contained in Appendix 3 and are pretty much the same policies as presented as part of this process throughout. The references, the Appendix 1 and 2 are the formal documents that we have to use in order to respond to the government. That's set down in regulation and statute. And I maybe should have made it clearer that it should be cross-referenced with Appendix 3, which is the document with changes in it as referenced in Appendices 1 and 2.
I think the problem with this, obviously with the development plan, it's a long drawn out process. And every stage, it came to the committee at every stage. We've sent away to the reporter our modified plan, and this is him coming back with comments on it, and now we're reacting to the comments. So, I mean, believe it or not, this has been through the committee at every stage and agreed with the committee. But what Councillor Redden's saying is probably right as well, but this is why we should have, or we should have had, a mandatory training in anyone that's on the planning, and that was part of the new Planning Act that was dropped for some weird reason, because it's the most heaviest document you'll ever get at planning is the updating the local development plan, and there is all sorts of reference to information, and it is times it can be quite bamboozling to look at it all. But the point is, we went through this in great detail at the planning application at the planning committee stage. We've not had, to be perfectly honest with you, at the planning committees that we have went through this, there hasn't been a great deal of questions or points raised on it. And I seem to remember we saying to the local members to look at their own area, because I know it's very difficult to look at every area, but to look at your own area and see what's proposed for housing, what's proposed for whatever development, and go back to the officers at the time and question every part. Now, I'm not sure if local members did that or not, or put any input into it, but this is really a response to the reporter, and we're putting in a response to him, and then once all that's been done, it then goes to the Scottish Government for adoption, and that'll be your local development plan for the next X amount of years. I don't know if that helps the members or even more confusing anymore, but basically what we've got here is our proposals with the comments coming from the reporter, and then we're reiterating what we think it should be in, and a lawyer is maybe dotting the I's and crossing the T's, etc. So I don't. Is there any other points? Would that be a fair summary, Gordon?
Yes, I think that would be a fair summary. You're right, it is a long drawn out process, and it's unfortunate that despite our best efforts we have to write things in a certain way in order to meet the regulations and in order to meet the requirements of Scottish planning policy and the national planning framework. I'd be more than happy to speak to any members who wanted further advice on what this all means for them. It would be our intention to have that consolidated document ready as soon as possible, but I'd be more than happy to speak to members in the interim. But you are correct, in this case, what we are seeking endorsement of is our response to the limited number of changes that have been recommended. Within the regulations, we can't fundamentally change anything else or introduce anything else at this stage, because we're now in a pretty legalistic process of steps that we've got to carry out and very limited scope for us to do anything further with the document.
Does that answer some of your points, Jim?
Thanks, Chair. It does, and I know, I understand what they're saying. I just felt that trying to read this document was impossible. You actually said what I was going to ask was, could we get some sort of training or something for members so that we can understand this? And just one wee question on the Bellsill Local Area Partnership. I've got Community Road East and Community Road West. Having grown up there, I've never known it as that. Why is that? If you could answer that, just a wee thing.
That would be purely on not investigating it and not having the particular background paper. Quite often what we will do is we will split sites between east and west. It's not east of Community Road or west of Community Road. Quite often with development sites we split them depending on potentially two different developers. Potentially a lot of the sites you will see, particularly in areas where there's affordable housing requirement, you'll notice that sites have been split in two, and one element will be affordable housing, another element will be mainstream housing to the open market. And it's a convention we use when we're looking to trace and track development of sites through the process, that it's easier for us to be able to segment them up in that way. We try to make it as clear as possible, but it's just it's the way we have to carry out these audits. And if it's any consolation to the councillor, my team, having spent 4 days reading every line of this plan with me, we're fed up hearing my voice trying to go through these changes. So yes, and on that point, yeah, we do feel the element of pain that you feel trying to look at the document, councillor.
Alan Beveridge.
Thanks, Ravina. It's just for a wee bit of clarity. I know there's the local area plan. However, where other sites for development, I take it this is not set in stone now. If there's other sites comes on for development, they can be added to this plan. Is that correct?
No, councillor, we can't add any sites to this plan. Submissions for planning permission can be granted for sites that aren't in the plan, but it would have to be granted in accordance with the policies of the plan, and they would have to be proven need in many cases for new development. So we do not have the ability to add to this plan. This is the plan as it stands. It will be the plan until it's replaced, and any new plan would be replaced under the new regulations, the new Planning Act and the new National Planning Framework. But that plan that is in front of you with those changes will be the plan, and anyone wanting to bring anything that's not identified in the plan or not in accordance with the plan, we'd have to comply with the policies to achieve that.
Yeah. Can I come back in again, Harry? Yeah. Thanks for that, Gordon. I thought that and understood that. But it seems to me that this is holding back a wee bit of development for the area. If a developer can come forward and the duration of this plan and bring other stuff to the table, or is this set? Is this to be set by a Scottish government or some other body? But as I say, it just seems to be that I mean, there's no that many sites on here, and are we holding back some development for our area, sticking to this local plan? Thanks.
Sites are identified in accordance with need. In relation to industrial land, it was identified that we didn't need any additional industrial land, and we wanted to concentrate on that which we had. In relation to housing land, there's extensive work undertaken at a regional level and a national level in the new planning framework to identify the requirement for housing land in order to meet that requirement within certain areas. In addition, we can only deal with the sites that are brought to us within the process, but those sites that are brought to us also have to meet certain standards. And we went through, and to a large degree had endorsed the way that we went through this. Sites have got to be assessed environmentally, they've got to be assessed for their transportation, for their accessibility, for their environmental impacts. Also, what we've got to be aware of is that too many sites can jeopardise development because it's difficult to develop as many sites at a single time. We're in a time of constraint within the development industry. There are supply chain problems, there's finance problems, There's problems in terms of securing materials, there's problems in terms of securing sufficient staff to be able to carry out development. So this is a carefully thought out set of proposals. This is carefully thought out identification of sites in order to meet requirements that are laid down in cooperation at a regional level. It doesn't absolutely preclude other sites coming forward, but as I say, those sites would have to be based on proven need, and it would also have to meet all the exacting requirements that are within the policies, not just of this plan, but any new plans that come forward above it, such as new Scottish planning policy or any other policies or guidance that come through.
Thanks.
Okay, Alan.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, Gordon.
You'll see always in every planning application, I'll say application level is local, and is it contrary to development plan? Yes or no? You'll see that in every application that comes in. You've also got this sort of a hybrid that we had when we were modifying our plan and what our existing local plan was. And maybe in the existing plan you couldn't build a house here, but in the new plan you could. So while it be contrary to the development plan at this moment in time, we'd be saying, well, you can, because in the new plan we're saying that it'd be okay, so therefore we'll give you plan permission for it. So it's a very, very complicated, it's an unbelievable document, but we are where we are. We have went through it umpteen times, and as Gordon says, anyone's got any individual for their own area, he's more than happy to speak to anything that's in the location for the area, for their own area, committee area. Okay, so we agree the recommendations?
Agree.
Right, that's us. Thanks very much. And I believe we might be on the hybrid on the 9th of December. So maybe see some of these in the Civic on the 9th of December, all going well. Okay, thank you very much for your attendance.
Thanks, Kavira.